Hello students, this is Dr. Tina Cannon, and I'm creating a video to help you with Worksheet 3 in Math 0530. And this worksheet goes along with your Math 1530 sections in probability. And so what I want to do is go through some things with you that will help you, and the last review that you did, and also quiz 2 that you should have completed this week. It deals with working with fractions and scientific notation. The main thing is make sure you know how to use your calculator to get a lot of these answers, because in the statistics course they're expecting you to know how to use the TI-83 or 84 calculator. And so the handouts are made, they show you step by step if you want to do this by hand, but also I show you the steps to use the calculator. So on this worksheet 3, notice the very first thing, again, just like you did in your review, it's going to talk about adding fractions. Now, to add fractions, you have to have a common denominator. And in this problem, or this example, notice you have an 8 as your denominator. So all you have to do is add the top part, the numerator, 3 plus 1 is 4, over 8, and then you're going to reduce 4 over 8. If you reduce, 4 goes into the numerator and denominator, you get 1/2. Now, you can use your calculator to do that exact same problem by placing your fractions in parentheses. So I'm going to show you this on the calculator. So we have 1 over 8 plus 3 over 8. So on my calculator, let me turn this on. Here's your on button. I'm going to hit clear. And so we're going to put in 1 over 8 using the parentheses. So we're going to do parentheses and then 1 divided by 8, close parenthesis. And then our problem said that we were going to add 3 over 8. So we're going to do plus, and I know this is a basic problem, but if you can do this, you should be able to do any of the fractions. So that's why I'm showing you this. Plus 3 over 8, and notice I'm going to put in parentheses. Now, if you hit the enter button, you're going to get a decimal. I noticed on the quiz, several of you were giving me decimal answers when it said specifically to give fraction answers. So if you didn't do well on the quiz, which I believe everybody that took the quiz, they made in at least the 80s. If you want to try to make 100, some of you just miss converting your decimals to fractions. So to do this, I'm going to push the math button. Let me find my cursor here. I'm going to push the math button. Notice number 1, it says enter, number 1 says fraction. I'm just going to push enter twice. And notice it will convert my decimal to a fraction. So math, enter, enter is how you can convert to fractions. So you will work this worksheet. Another thing I wanted you to see, that when you're working with fractions, you may place the negative sign in the numerator, you may place it in the denominator, or you may place it beside the fraction. All these mean exactly the same thing. Now, if you had, let's do this. If I had, let me write this down. Let's see. If I had negative A over negative B, that's when the two negatives would cancel each other out and make a positive. So you just have A over B. Okay, if you have two negative signs. But if you only have one negative, these all three mean the same thing. Okay, the next thing is there is a practice problem. They want you to type this in your calculator and use math, enter, enter, and come up with your answer. So you can read through the handout. So that's the first page. Second page, they go through and show you how to work when you have different denominators. So they give you an example here. Just type it in your calculator with parentheses around the fractions and hit math, enter, enter, and see if you get the same answer as when you work the problem. But notice on the bottom of page 2, these are your steps for converting from a fraction, converting to a fraction in your calculator. So you're enter the fraction and just push math, and you can choose number 1 or you can just push enter, enter, either one. Okay, so then you have another problem to work down here at the bottom. Just use your calculator. Now, let me show you this. The negative sign on the calculator is at the bottom of the calculator. This one down here is negative. This one to the right is a minus. So make sure you use the correct symbol. That's a negative. So we have negative 7/10. So back to the first page, if you want to type negative 7/10, or you could put 7/-10, or negative 7/10, whichever way you want to type it, it comes out the same thing. Usually I just type negative 7/10 in parentheses plus 8/15, math, enter, enter. Okay, now the last page, let's see, nope, the third page is dealing with statistics. And we're actually taking some problems that you have in statistics, and because in probability you deal with fractions, that's why we're placing this here. You are dealing in section, I believe it's 5.2, I believe, where you're dealing with complements, and it's written with a little c, okay? If you read this problem on this, it says, a typical question on a statistics test, the test taker is to select one of 5 possible multiple choice questions. You got A, B, C, D, E. Because only one answer is correct, if you make a random guess, your probability of being correct is 1 out of 5. Notice what they ask you to find in this one. They ask you to find the complement. Find the probability of making a random guess and not being correct. Notice the formula can be written as P of not A equals 1 minus the probability of A. Or here's the notation we use in the MyLabs Plus. It's probability of correct with a little c, that means not correct, equals 1 minus the probability of being correct. And notice up here is your fraction of being correct. So you're going to have to write out 1 minus 1/5 and type it in your calculator and work that. Okay, the next exercise is going to give you 3 probabilities. It's going to give you the probability of applying to UTK and be admitted, you get 1/4. Applying at UTC, you get 2/5. And then applying to both and getting accepted is 1/10. And what happens, they ask you to find the probability of not being admitted to UTK. That would be the complement. So you'll take 1 minus being admitted. And then they're going to ask you the complement of UTC. That'd be 1 minus probability of getting admitted to UTC. And then part C is going to be the one that deals with the addition property, the OR. If the chances of being admitted to either UTC or UTK or both is equal to, here's the formula, the probability of UTK or UTC. It's the probability of UTK plus UTC minus the probability of UTK and UTC. I kind of wrote those backwards. So you're just placing your fractions in each part of this, and be sure to take off where they were accepted in both, because that's already been counted. So, and then you'll use your calculator. And then the last thing says, okay, what's the probability of not being admitted to either one? Well, up here, we were admitted to both. We were admitted to UTK or UTC or both. So if you want to find the complement of that, you're just doing 1 minus whatever you come up with in part C. So that's how you'll do that one. And then the last section is scientific notation. You have some numbers that you want to type these into your calculator. You come up with this notation, 3E13. That is not your answer. Some of you were writing that as your answer. You've got to remember, scientific notation has to be written with a base 10. So it'd be 3 times 10 to the 13th power. Or if you do a small number, notice this one, and you type it in your calculator, if it's a small number, it ends up with a negative exponent because the decimal's on the left. And so notice you have a 1.2e negative 7. That is not the answer. It's 1.25 times 10 to the negative 7. And then you're going to have 2 statistics problems in exercise 3. And they ask you to find the probability that they are both defective in this problem. You'll have to read through this, but I've given you the problem to type in. What I want you to do is type this in your calculator, write the scientific notation like this, okay, and then write out the decimal notation rounded to 7 decimal places. The reason I'm doing this, there is a problem on your homework that you have to do 7 places. And then last on part B, they ask you to use exponents. You're selecting 7. Let me show you the exponent on our calculator. So for instance, if I wanted to type in something like 5 to the 7th power, I'll type 5, the caret symbol, which is under clear, and then 7. Notice it looks like that, 5 to the 7th. Now if you got the new calculator, it's going to do actual little exponent. And so then you'll push enter and it gives you your answer. Okay, so that's what, go ahead and finish up this section and it will help you in your statistics dealing with probability.